Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Amanda, the founder of Prana Thrive, and I have with me one of my practitioners, Tracy, also from Prana Thrive.
Hey everyone.
And we are both naturopaths and we specialize in everything gut health related. And a big part of that is digestive symptoms. And what we're going to talk about today is bloating. I think nearly every person has experienced bloating at some point in their life, but we have many people that we work with that are experiencing extreme levels of bloating either all day, all the time, or throughout the day, or on a fairly regular basis. And from discomfort to pain, it really can create some major stressful situations for that person as well. So today we're going to talk all about bloating, reasons for bloating, about things that you can either do at home or extra things that can be really helpful to address that bloating, and not just to reduce it, to actually resolve it. So I think that is one misconception that we've definitely come across over the years, is that sometimes people are told that they just have to learn to live with it, that, maybe they can reduce it, but that they've just, they've got IBS, medically diagnosed IBS, for example, and bloating is just a symptom of that they need to look at just dealing with. So, but we every day are helping people to absolutely resolve and get rid of their bloating. So, we're going to talk about many different reasons for bloating. So, is it your liver or your gallbladder? We look at stress factors that affect our digestive function, sleep issues, the microbiome. So, looking at all of our different gut bacteria, LPS inflammation. So, we're going to cover a lot of different topics, and this will give you some clear ideas of what things to try if you haven't, but extra things that can be really helpful to look into as well. So, a big one is the liver. So, the liver is a very important digestive organ. It is something that is working really hard for us all of the time, whether it's to help to produce bile, to improve our digestive function. Our liver is important for detoxification, for hormone metabolism, and many other functions in the body. And if our liver is not functioning well, we can really start to experience bloating, fullness, discomfort in our digestive system. Tracy, did you want to talk a little bit around how liver functions, and maybe some of the
Yeah,
reasons
sure.
that we can start to feel bloated?
Yeah, so I think often people are getting their liver function test done by the GP, which is a standard test that most people get when they go. And that's really showing that there is damage starting to occur. The raised enzymes are a warning light that something is becoming damaged in the liver. But we as functional practitioners are actually looking at the function of the liver, and the liver can actually be quite dysfunctional without having raised liver enzymes. So we want to be looking at a very thorough medical history, be looking at lots of signs and symptoms when clients come to us to give us a bit of an indication whether their liver is playing a role in their health symptoms. So the liver has two stages of detoxification, and they can often be out of sync. And they become out of sync due to many different reasons, often too much stress and too many, toxins that really slow down the first phase of the liver. And what happens is when that liver is in its first phase, it makes these toxins that we ingest into our body every single day into really toxic metabolites. And then the second phase, they become less toxic, and then they get removed through our stool out through the body, and kidneys is the third phase of the detoxification. So when these are really out of sync, this can have such huge ramifications on all body systems, but particularly digestion, of course. And we want to make sure that they're in sync. So there's lots of things that we can do, but naturopathically and herbally and lifestyle-wise to support those phases of detoxification coming back into sync. But the liver also creates and produces bile, and bile gets taken to the gallbladder and then released into the small intestines. And we'll go into the gallbladder a little bit further detail next. But what I would be looking for in my clients is, maybe symptoms of itchy skin or skin issues, maybe nausea or not feeling hungry in the morning, headaches, like a dull headache in the morning, like you've maybe drunk alcohol but you haven't. They're signs that the liver could be not functioning correctly. It's out of whack, out of sync. Intolerance to fatty foods, not being able to tolerate cream and really rich fatty meals. So there's lots of nutrients that we can do to support the liver. And I think the symptoms resolve actually quite quickly when we're supporting it with the right nutrients and right herbs. But to actually really detoxify is a much longer process. But we need really good B vitamins. We need good amino acids for liver function. But I love bitter foods. So your red burgundy type lettuce, that is super bitter. Your rocket is really bitter. Dandelion root in particular is a beautiful herb that we can access really easily to utilize as self-healing tools. Making sure that we've got lots of hydration. Some people just simply aren't drinking enough water. And of course, when we're adding in all these beautiful things to support the liver, we also need to think about what is actually impacting the liver. So removing the toxins, pesticides, toxins within the household, alcohol, medications, assessing whether there's alternative to the medications that you might be on. What's your go-tos, Amanda, when supporting the liver?
Yeah, I love the bitter foods that you mentioned. Rocket is something I have pretty much every day, to the point we buy gigantic bags of rocket. And it's that wild rocket, because there's a few different types of rocket. So we get the wild rocket that really has that strong bitter taste. But I'd have to say it's not something that my taste buds weren't used to that type of food a long time ago. So it was more from understanding the nutritional point of view to adding that in. But now I actually really love the taste. And I think that's a lot of foods that Tracy just mentioned then as well, especially the bitter foods, herbal teas. That's something I always ask clients, have you tried any particular herbal teas? And there are so many, but there are a lot that actually support our digestive function. And many people have, but also I find many people haven't, because they're like, oh no, I'm not sure, I haven't really tried, or I've had some, but they didn't taste very nice, like the dandelion root. Excellent, not the most tasty, but is very, very good for the liver. But, there are some excellent tasting herbal teas as well that can really help to support our liver and our digestive function, especially like our licorice and our fennel. I'd say nettle. Well, I wouldn't say that's a super tasty one, but often nettle can be mixed in with some other tasty herbs. So, looking at the foods that we can incorporate in, but also looking at foods that may be creating that sluggish liver, or our liver is not coping well with, like Tracy mentioned as well. So more rich, fatty foods. Sometimes if people are having a lot of curries with a lot of oils, that's quite a rich sort of heavy food. So we need to look at the type of, I guess, the whole combination of what people are eating on a daily basis. But I would say the big ones that are usually an issue outside of the rich or fatty foods would be like dairy, for example, particularly. And I wouldn't say all types of dairy. Some people, yes, they are intolerant to all types of dairy, and sometimes that's a bit of a trial and error situation. But your milk, cream, ice cream, those forms of dairy, yogurt, sometimes yes, sometimes no. The reason I say that is that a really high quality yogurt, an organic, hot set, no added sugars sort of situation, that has a lot of good bacteria for our digestive function, can be really helpful. So, and then things like grass-fed butter, for example. But dairy is quite heavy as well. So a lot of people don't digest dairy foods too well. And that can really add to that extra pressure on the liver. Gluten is another food that can start to slow down or create more work for our liver as well. So definitely some foods that we can start to look at. And then, like Tracy said, what we do on an extra level is start to really look at nutritional levels. So do you have enough B12, magnesium, zinc? So amino acids, so really important nutrients that are essential for proper liver function and liver detoxification. Then we have different herbal remedies that we'll use as well. They could be in a powder, a capsule, or a tablet form, but there's some really excellent herbs, even something like broccoli sprout extract, which you can eat broccoli sprouts, but a very high concentration in a supplement form is excellent for further supporting the liver. But that can then start to put the liver in a little bit of a detoxification state. So when we're working with people, we're wanting to first assess, can we change the simple things, looking at foods, looking at nutrients or extra foods that we can add in. And then if we need to start looking a little bit further, starting to slowly improve those detoxification pathways to not create further issues. Which really brings us to a lot of the topics that we're going to discuss as we over the next few minutes, talking about other digestive organs and the role of our microbiome. So important. Was there anything else you wanted to mention there around liver?
No. So, I mean, the gallbladder is attached to the liver, and it's where the bile is produced in the liver, and then it's the bile is stored in the gallbladder and released from the gallbladder. So, this is a major part of proper digestion, which, if it's dysfunctional, any of that process is dysfunctional, will end up causing bloating. So did you want to go into its role and how you identify maybe whether the gallbladder could be an issue or bile production could be an issue?
Yeah, definitely. So a really common symptom that I have clients mention to me is right-sided pain. And when I ask where is that pain, then they usually point exactly to where the liver and the gallbladder is located, which is on the right side of the body. It's just sort of tucked under, protected by our ribs. So sort of the bottom section of your ribs on the right side, you've got your liver and your gallbladder. And so having pain in that area could be a dull pain, could be a sharp pain. Often the pain comes and goes. It's usually not a constant pain, but that is something that I've had so many clients initially mention. And then when we've started to work on improving their digestive function, and especially looking much further into any gut inflammation and their looking at microbiome issues, that is a very common symptom that when I check in with clients, it's gone. And sometimes they've had that symptom for years and years. They've had a liver function test, like Tracy mentioned, that maybe has shown some liver enzymes high or maybe not. And their doctor says, oh, your liver's in perfect function. But if your liver enzymes are in the normal levels, it doesn't mean your liver is, and your gallbladder we're talking about, is functioning perfectly. It just means it's not in a state of inflammation or higher sort of levels of inflammation. So that right-sided pain, something I've just seen absolutely resolve, which is excellent. Floating stool. We highly recommend everyone look at their poo. You don't have to do it all the time, but ideally it should be a certain consistency. We usually say like similar to a banana, and it should sink. So if it's floating, that's an indication of undigested fats in the stool, which then we can definitely link back to gallbladder function. Nausea, as Tracy mentioned before, especially nausea first thing in the morning, but it could be nausea throughout the day as well. That is a very, very common symptom that I've had clients mention to me. And then also just that intolerance to fatty food. So some people will, after they've noticed a number of times that when they eat a certain food or a certain meal, it might be a combination of foods. So that extra richness of like fats or oils that then they're just feeling quite full, bloated. Obviously what we're talking about here as well. So that full sort of bloated feeling. So there's some really common symptoms of a gallbladder deficiency. And then, I've had so many clients tell me that they've had their gallbladder removed. Now, of course, in a very acute state, there is times when people need to have their gallbladder removed, and often it can happen very, very suddenly. But it can also, there are signs and symptoms that we can start to understand that lead up to that point. So we want to keep our gallbladder as much as possible, but we understand when there's been a situation that it has needed to be removed. But when the gallbladder has then been removed, the role of the liver is even more important. So we need to make sure that we're supporting the liver in that bile secretion. And we're looking at how other ways that we can improve that digestion of fats through our nutrition, through our microbiome, and through extra herbal supplements or enzymes and things like that. So Yeah. Are there any other symptoms that you have clients mention to you, Tracy, that you think of the gallbladder?
Well, no, I think you've mentioned them all. The floating stool, the intolerance to fats. So that's what I'd be looking for. And again, when we support it with the right nutrition and the right herbs, the symptoms resolve quite quickly, which is really beautiful to give the client relief that they have been searching for a really, really long time. I think with the pain side of things, the right sided referred pain from the gallbladder up to the right side of the shoulder,
Mm.
to be honest, I don't see that a lot, but I have seen it, and it is well known that that can be a symptom. So if you are getting right-sided shoulder pain and you can't actually identify any physical muscular bone issues, then and you're experiencing a lot of digestive issues, it could be referred pain. So to consider that. So yeah, I don't really want to mention too much more about around the gallbladder. Maybe those that have had their gallbladder removed are often told that there won't be any ramifications,
Mm.
but that's not what I experience. What I'm seeing is a lot of people come to me with bloating, food intolerances, can't eat a lot of different foods that they used to be able to enjoy when they were much younger. They will often get loose bowel motions, diarrhea. So again, when the gallbladder has been removed, we can actually support the liver and the production of the bile and use lifestyle and diet tips to improve that digestion once the gallbladder has been removed.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Tracy. And, another really big topic is stress. Stress definitely has many impacts on our health. But when it comes to our digestive health, when we're in that state of fight or flight, so when we have really stressful situations, but also something that we see is that many people are just experiencing a lot of daily stress, or they've got into such a high level of busyness through their work, for example, or with their study or with their family. And they're actually in a state of stress all of the time. And that impact of our nervous system sends messages to our digestive system to slow things down. So to produce less stomach acid, to produce less bile, less enzymes. Because when we're in a state of stress, it's not considering our digestive function to be the most important action at that time. So when then our stress is prolonged or we're experiencing that daily stress, everything starts to slow down. So when you don't have enough stomach acid, that's slowing down how food is being digested in the stomach. It gets passed through into the small intestine. If it's not digested properly, it starts to create a little bit of inflammation. And then as it moves through our digestive system, so we've got our small intestine and our bowel, if foods are not digested properly, they can start to ferment. And some foods have a high fermenting potential, which means that they ferment much more quickly and easily. And so if they're not initially digested well, then it's the role of our gut bacteria to try and break down that food further. But then, it can already be too late that we've started to feel that gas and bloating even in the small intestine. So, bloating is something that people can experience upper, sort of just under the sort of the diaphragm, or it can be across the middle, or it can be really low in our digestive system. And so that can, when we ask clients too, where do you experience that bloating, maybe the time frame after eating or the time of the day. So lots of different timing questions that we can ask also gives us an indication of where there is an issue, what part of the digestive system, for example, is we need to focus on. So, but yeah, that extra fermentation causes, a buildup of sort of gases, and that creates a lot of bloating. So there are many other, I guess, stress related reasons as well. We can have hormonal imbalances. Is there anything you wanted to mention specifically around stress, Tracy?
We talk about stress a lot and how it impacts the
Mm,
digestion. So I think we've even got a separate recording specifically on this. So
you do.
it is so imperative that I would actually go to that video and look into it further. So To simplify it, the stress hormones that get released when we're super busy, when we're an A-type personality, when we go, 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 their roles are to remove the blood from the digestion and put it into the muscles so we can fight and flee our territory. So the body doesn't know the difference between that you're actually not under attack. It just thinks, okay, well, I've had those hormones, cortisol and adrenaline released. I'm in a stressed state. I better prepare for a threat. So what happens is when there's less blood flow to the digestion, we get less stomach acid, we get less digestive enzymes. The liver function is not optimal. It impacts the thyroid, and the thyroid impacts how fast and slow the body moves. It dumps a lot of sugar into the blood, and sugar actually impacts the digestion hugely, creating more inflammation, etc., etc., and it stops the gut from healing. So there's this flow-on effect of all of these things that are occurring. And so when stress is done occurring over a long time, the gut just is not healing. We start to get dysbiosis, which is imbalances in the gut microbiome, which I think we'll talk about next. So yeah, it is so imperative that we really look at how we are showing up each day in life. How busy are we? What are our true priorities? So I think I've sort of said as much as I want to on the stress there, but I wanted to actually talk about high and low stomach acid, because stress will impact the stomach acid production, and that will be very impactful on bloating. And as Amanda said, we take a very thorough history of all of your symptoms. How far after a meal are you getting bloating? Is it immediate? Is it much later? Do you wake up with bloating, or is it by the end of the day it's worse? What's the intensity? How often? All of these things give us a lot of clues. And stomach, a proper digestion starts from the mouth, and the sensation and the smell and looking at your food all starts to create a beautiful snowball effect for proper digestion. So we're detectives in trying to find out whereabouts in your digestion could be going wrong, but also looking at more upstream things that could be causing the digestion to be out of whack. So everything is interrelated. What's the thyroid doing? What's the brain doing? What's the brain telling the body, etc., etc. Yeah, just know that if you do have bloating, you need to have a practitioner to help guide you in finding the actual cause that's going on for you, and it's unique for everyone. So we're talking about some main things, but there are many things that could be causing bloating, and it will always be unique to you.
That's right. And, that is brings us to our really big topic that we love to talk about, even more than what we've just talked about. And that's about the role of the microbiome. So the microbiome is all of the bacteria in your gut. The more we understand about this, the more we realize that it is an amazing ecosystem. It's something that I've been focusing on for the last 10 years with my clients. And so when we look at our different bacteria, there is a lot of complexity. So what I mean by that is that there are hundreds of different bacteria. They should all be in a certain balance, talking to each other, working together. But when we see people that have had extreme bloating for a long amount of time, and especially if they've tried the things we've already mentioned, they've looked at their stress levels, they've looked at the food, often that's something that someone will say, oh, I'm just going to change my diet first, see how I feel. And that's important to do, definitely. But when people come to work with us, they usually have tried a lot of those simple things. Maybe they've helped a little bit, but ultimately they're still in a really either painful or discomfort, state. And that becomes really stressful as well. So, and then that feeds into the stress that maybe was already, part of one of the original triggers. So, so when we're looking at the microbiome, one of the first things that I think of when I'm going through that initial assessment is thinking about any bad bacteria. So our bad bacteria, a pathogenic bacteria, there are many, many different types of these bacteria, and they produce different toxins or different gases. There are methane producing bacteria. There are sulfur producing bacteria. So that's just a couple. So especially when we have bloating that turns into really smelly gas, and that might, people are often embarrassed to to mention that, but it is a question we ask. So, if you've got that really smelly gas, which I think we've grown up to understand that, oh, that's just normal. It's common, but is it normal? No, when you've got really smelly gas, and feeling really bloated, it is an indication that you've got a buildup of bad or, opportunistic bacteria that's causing that situation. So, then we have so bacteria that are producing those extra toxins that creates that extra bloating and discomfort. But then we also have certain types of Clostridium and Enterobacter, for example, that cause our food to, affects our digestive function. So our food ferments more easily. That causes that buildup of hydrogen gas, which creates bloating. And then we have the hundreds of beneficial bacteria that are so important for our digestive function, whether it's digesting the fats, digesting carbohydrates, digesting the proteins, or bacteria that help with digesting all of those different food components. So we have a lot of different types of bacteria and a lot of different digestive functions. And so if we're lacking or sometimes missing those bacteria, then that really slows down that digestive function or can start to impact on certain foods or food groups. So sometimes then we look at someone's diet and there'll be some really obvious individual foods, but then sometimes we start to identify whole food groups that people are reacting to, and it's often not the food, it's the person's microbiome. So you're probably thinking, how can we possibly know all these different bacteria, and whether you have them or don't have them and their levels and so on? So we don't guess. We use a microbiome test, and it's a very comprehensive test. There are different types of microbiome tests. So we use the most advanced in understanding all, those opportunistic or bad bacteria, but a very comprehensive look at all of your good bacteria. So then we can really understand where that bloating is coming from, or does it have many contributing factors? So often I wouldn't see just one bacteria out of balance for someone that has bloating. I would see many bacteria out of balance. And so then we start to assess those bacteria, create a plan, understand what we need to do. So I can talk about so many different bacteria. What are some of your favorite markers that you like to look at in a microbiome test?
So I just love the microbiome testing that we use. It is absolutely fascinating, when we get the report back for the client and just how it actually mars up with what's going on with the client. So what I mean by that is the bacteria influence every part of our body, and every part of our body influences the bacteria. So there's this bidirectional thing that's going on. And so we need to sort of get a wedge in there and start to improve something. And then there's like a snowball effect of what occurs in repairing. So we don't just go in there and kill bacteria. We don't just go in there and give a probiotic. We look at the whole person. We look at how the gut microbiome's influencing blood sugar levels, how it's influencing the liver, how it's influencing the thyroid, how it's influencing the brain. And we come up with a plan that's very individualized for that person to bring it all together. So yes, we use the gut microbiome testing to get very detailed for that person, but it's also very I would say a comprehensive approach. We don't just use the gut microbiome test. We pull it all together and then come up with a plan for that client.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's the, understanding that the microbiome test provides us with a lot of data, a lot of information, but it is not going to say, oh, yes, you have bloating because of this reason. So like Tracy said, we're taking everything into account. We're asking you about your stress levels. We're looking at the food that you're eating, how you're eating it, understanding whether the liver needs extra support. And then we're looking at the microbiome for that really detailed understanding as well. So if it's not the bad bacteria creating the extra gas and bloating, one of my really favorite bacteria to talk about is Akkermansia, and its full name is Akkermansia mucophilia. And mucophilia actually means mucus loving. So this particular bacteria is really important for the gut lining. I think most people have heard the term leaky gut now, or intestinal permeability. So Akkermansia is really important for protecting our gut lining cells. So when we have too little, or we maybe are missing that bacteria altogether, or we might have excessively high levels of that bacteria. So again, the microbiome test we use will give us that information. Then that can really cause a lot of inflammation of the gut lining. And when our gut lining is inflamed, so many foods, often changeable foods. So often when we're going through diet with a client, and we're understanding, one, looking at what you're eating, but also asking, do you have any known food reactions? And I find many people do. Clients will definitely list certain foods that they've really pinpointed now over time that they're reacting to. But many people will also say to me, I just don't know. I can't work it out. I feel like I've worked it out, and then there's a food or a meal that I eat that I thought was my safe meal, and then I feel bloated after that as well. That would be really, really common for the sort of people that are coming to work with us. So that whole changeable reaction to foods, that is also a common symptom linking to the gut lining. But again, the gut lining, there's other bacteria associated, but Akkermansia is just such an important bacteria for that protection of our gut lining. So then we start to look at, do we need to prescribe certain probiotics? And when there's missing bacteria, that is definitely an important part of the treatment plan. But more so, what do we need to feed and support the growth of those bacteria as well? So then we're looking at your foods that you're eating. But for a lot of people, they may be on such a restricted diet because their symptoms are so severe, or they've had them for such a long time that they've just slowly cut more and more foods out. So what we want to do is start to look at incorporating more foods in, but that's a very slow process as well. So then we use some really well-researched, targeted microbiome supporting supplements. So we look at prebiotics, we look at probiotics, we look at liver support, we look at anti-inflammatory support, we're looking at amino acids to support the repair. So many amazing supplements. And that's a really big area that Tracy and myself have the knowledge and the research in. And we prescribe supplements in a very targeted way. So like Tracy said, we create a specific plan that's unique to you. And also, working on, how can we start to improve that digestion in our stomach or support our liver and our gallbladder, and then looking at balancing the microbiome. And we usually don't need to do all of those things at the same time. We might need to do a little bit of those things at the same time. So obviously, if we're identifying that there's a lot of areas that are affecting you personally. But I guess that's the benefit of the microbiome test as well, is that not just looking at the individual bacteria, we're also understanding where those different bacteria affect different parts of the body. So there are a lot of bacteria that support the liver, for example. So if then you're deficient in those bacteria, then we know, well, yes, and then we're looking at your symptoms, your liver definitely needs that extra support. And especially if we're looking at like phase 2 liver detoxification, that's something that's very heavily impacted by our gut bacteria. Did you want to talk about any other bacteria, Tracy?
No, I think, I don't think it serves a great deal of purpose getting right into all the bacteria because, the report is 42 pages and is very detailed, and it's about combining all of the knowledge that you get in that massive report. So, yeah, I think it's about pulling together the piece of the puzzle. And yeah, we absolutely want to get rid of those pathogenic bacteria. How we do that would be determined by the rest of the report, and looking at what the diversity is like. How good is that? Do you have way too much diversity? Is that maybe indicating SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which will cause a lot of bloating, or do you have too little, etc., etc.? So it's a very detailed and skilled, and a lot of skill is needed to look at the report.
Yeah, definitely. And, like you just mentioned there, SIBO, that would be a common question that people will say, oh, do I have IBS? Do I have SIBO? Do I have both? And the label is not so important, because it's really understanding all of the complexities of what's going on for you personally. So yes, we may look at that report and go, well, yes, you've definitely got bacteria associated with SIBO. But SIBO is a type of dysbiosis. So it's then understanding, well, what is going on for you, and maybe why. So then we look at the different things that can be causing that disruption in the microbiome. Is it long-term antibiotic use? Or sometimes it's not even long-term, it's past antibiotic use that then the microbiome has never recovered. And that's what we do, is then really understand, well, what do we need to do to support that healthy balance or growth of the microbiome. Looking at pesticides in our food. There are chemicals used in skincare that are absorbing into our bloodstream. They're affecting our microbiome. There's a lot of new research on that. The quality of the water that we drink. Then we're looking at, medications. Like some people are on certain prescription medications, and that's important for them for whatever a particular area of health issues. But, is that medication maybe also having a negative impact on their microbiome? And then low stomach acid and all the other things that we've mentioned already. So
I think we need to just briefly mention proton pump inhibitors here.
Yes.
So a proton pump inhibitor, Pariet, Nexium, Somac, people are often popped onto that medication because of possible reflux or even bloating. The doctor might think that it could be some reflux associated with that bloating and pain. Taken long term, there is many side effects, ramifications of having lower stomach acid. So it really contributes to a gut dysbiosis and SIBO long term. So if you're on those medications, reach out, have a chat, because there are solutions, and we have done another recording specifically on this.
we have, yes.
Yeah, so we need to have the stomach acid in proper production, not too much and not too little, to make sure that the microbiome are balanced and healthy and proper digestion.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tracy. And, that's something I have definitely seen where people have been put onto that PPI medication, and maybe not for the reflux, but for the bloating. And there's so many other much better options. Or they've started with the reflux and now they have bloating because of the negative impacts of that medication. So yes, I'll link to below. We have an excellent video where we talk all about that. So let's see. Oh gosh, I think we've talked about so many things, so many different areas of the body that can be impacting on our bloating, different things that can be helpful. Looking at our diet. Sorry.
What about the lipopolysaccharides, which is
Oh.
a major inflammation marker? It's
Definitely.
it's a toxin created from undesirable bad bacteria in the gut, and there's so much research on lipopolysaccharide, and it's linked to almost all diseases because it's so inflammatory to our body. And inflammation is the driver of all disease. It's a really good marker that we're looking at in all of our clients' gut microbiome tests. So not only is it looking at, I guess, digestion, gut microbiome balance, but it's also a really good marker for looking into the future for general wellness. We want that LPS to be low. We don't want it to be raised. We see it hugely raised in some of our reports. And this is just really great information, and to get clients motivated to really look at their health so that they can enjoy not just better digestion, but a healthy life into the future.
Yeah, definitely, Tracy. That's really great to mention as well. And especially the potential impact on autoimmune inflammation. So, when people have either got an autoimmune condition diagnosed, or sometimes people have an undiagnosed autoimmune condition. And what I mean by that is that they've been told by a medical practitioner that they have the signs and symptoms, but tests haven't been able to really pinpoint and have a condition, an autoimmune disease diagnosed. And, when we're looking at that LPS inflammation, in most cases, that is very high. So then we can start to really understand what bacteria are associated with that, how we can reduce that inflammation through the microbiome, but through our diet, our stress levels, and everything we've talked about. And reverse that type of autoimmune inflammation response in the early phases, or help to much more reduce and manage in the long term for people who maybe have already had that diagnosis. So LPS, definitely LPS inflammation. or
So I
toxins?
have a lot of people come to me, and they're coming to me for gut issues, and they have an autoimmune condition. So they're not
Mm.
specifically coming to me for Hashimoto's. We work on their gut, their antibodies come down, and we don't actually have to really specifically work on being so targeted with all of these things. So, really getting to root cause, the actual cause of the dysfunction, the inflammation in the body that's driving the immune dysfunction.
That's right. So, bloating is just one of many symptoms. And usually, yes, rare someone would just come to us with bloating. It's usually bloating and a long list, or it could be a short list. But yeah, exactly. Really understanding the root cause and improving overall wellness is so important. So excellent. I know we've discussed lots of things there. I hope you found that really helpful, whether there's simple things that you're thinking, okay, I can change in my diet. A few, foods that you can look at incorporating to reduce inflammation, like the bitter foods, addressing your stress. Or if you've tried those things, or you're thinking, gosh, I sound like one of the people that we're talking about, and you're really looking for help, we are here to help. We do work with people one-on-one. And like we've talked about, really understanding that complexity and creating very personalized plans. So if you'd like some more information, there'll be a link in the video below. So if you have enjoyed this, please, follow, subscribe. We're starting to do more and more of these videos because we really just want to help to educate people to either, one, understand their symptoms, but also understand things that they can do themselves, but where there is, support available. That is also something that I have people tell me, clients every day, that once they start working with myself or Tracy, they're like, oh my gosh, I never knew that someone would know this type of information or this type of service was available. So it's our job to help educate people as much as we can. So anything else you wanted to add as we finish up, Tracy?
No, I think it's both of our joys to be able to help people and not see them struggle any longer. And I don't think doing it on your own is the best approach. If you've been struggling for a while, reach out for support. If it's not us, someone else. But yeah, finding a practitioner that knows their stuff and takes a really well-rounded approach.
That's right. So thanks for listening. We hope you found that helpful, and look out for our next video. Take
Thanks,
care. Bye.
guys. Bye.